Hello. The terrorist organization known in English as the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, and alternatively by the initials MEK or MKO, has a long and ugly history. For years it was even designated a terrorist organization by the United States and other countries, until the US decided that Iran was its mortal enemy and needed to be destroyed. Now it is financially supported by these countries. It seems ironic that an organization that refers to itself as a people's organization has so little support in the nation it purports to assist. Within Iran, the MEK is seen for what it is, an anti-government terrorist organization. Its many horrific crimes against the people of Iran and other people have been clearly documented. Today, I'm only going to discuss its role in the 1991 slaughter of Iraqi Kurds. Following the Gulf War, the United States wanted regime change in Iraq. This is U.S. speak for toppling a nation's leader, whether a cruel tyrant or, as is more likely the case when the U.S. wants regime change, a democratically elected leader who seeks to assist the people of the nation to which he or she has been elected, but has political leanings too far to the left to please the mighty U.S. At this point, immediately after the Gulf War, Saddam Hussein seemed vulnerable, and Kurdish groups wanted to seize this opportunity. They had long suffered under his rule, and seeing vulnerability, sought to take advantage of it. During the 1980s, it's estimated that 182,000 Kurds disappeared during what was known as the Anfal operation. The goal of this was to depopulate the Kurdish countryside. This is genocide. The U.S. President at the time of the Gulf War, George H.W. Bush, encouraged revolution in Iraq and spoke to Iraqis via the so-called Voice of America broadcasting system. He said that the military could stop the bloodshed by forcing Saddam out, and then Iraq could comply with United Nations resolutions and, as he put it, quote, rejoin the family of peace-loving nations, close quote. I will digress for a moment to point out the sheer hypocrisy of these statements. The U.S. government was encouraging the overthrow of another government. It was then saying that Iraq could comply with UN resolutions, something the U.S. has never required of its close ally, the apartheid Zionist entity. And the U.S., which has been at war for all but a few years of its entire existence, is hardly a peace-loving nation. The MEK was anxious to put down a revolt in a nation that was hosting them, following their expulsion from Iran. According to a 1992 report from Human Rights Watch, quote, testimony collected was persuasive that the MKO and foreign mercenaries helped Iraqi soldiers to crush the uprising, close quote. The report says that it wasn't possible to assess the importance of the MEK's role, and that of other groups, but there is sufficient information to indicate that the MEK's role was significant. The Kurds took control of Mosul and Sulaymaniyah and continued to advance. Stopping them if they grew close to Baghdad would have been difficult, and this is where the MEK or MKO intervened. Their forces entered Kirkuk and assisted in the recapturing of that city by Ba'athist government forces. The same report from Human Rights Watch discussed the people reported missing as a result of this uprising. The report reads in part as follows, quote, also missing to this day are an unknown number of Kurdish men who are among several thousand rounded up from Kurdish neighborhoods of Kirkuk days before the outbreak of the uprising. While most of those were arrested within 5 weeks, some have never reappeared. Baghdad refused to comment on their fate when the matter was raised by the Kurdish leadership during negotiations with Baghdad, Kurdish political sources said. Close quote. Further in the Human Rights Watch report, it says this, quote, the post-uprising roundups were particularly sweeping in the holy cities of Karbala and Al-Najaf. Those taken include hundreds of clerics. Between March 19th and 23rd of 1991, authorities in Al-Najaf arrested the 95-year-old Shia spiritual leader, Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Abu al-Qassam al-Khoi, and 105 persons from his family and his associates and their families. The so-called leaders of the MKO are Mossad and Maryam Rajavi. Mossad Rajavi has not been seen in 20 years, and Maryam Rajavi is now the face of this terrorist organization. After the 1991 uprising, Mossad Rajavi is quoted as saying the following, quote, The Iraqi Kurds were our longtime enemy. In this operation, we had strategic unity and common interests with the landlord, and we saved the landlord being Saddam Hussein. Maryam Rajavi demonstrated the brutality for which she is known. She said, quote, "I had previously told you that these people did not deserve to be shot, and put them under the tank, and keep the bullets for the guards." Close quote. Additional documentation quotes Commander Majid Alamain. Quote, "The locals got killed with the forces surrounded by the armored and mechanized units of the First Axis, and gathered in the heights of the Jebedah. We buried them with a loader. One of them was alive and was blown up several times by a person named Ghalam Nabi with a loader nail and hit the ground to be killed. This is the hatred of Maryam's fighters against the Iraqi Kurds." Close quote. What was the toll on the Kurdish people? A year after the uprising, Human Rights Watch reported a death toll of at least 200,000. Additionally, over 180,000 Kurds and Shia who fled their homes remained displaced internally a year later, and another 70,000 were in foreign refugee camps. Today, Kurdistan is a semi-autonomous region of Iraq, where its residents deal with the fallout of the US-backed unrest in Syria, Israeli hostility toward Iran, which includes occasional bombings, and the constant threat of an Israeli or US invasion of Iran, geopolitical tensions over Middle East oil supplies, and the general US-caused destabilization of the entire Middle East. The MEK, with a long history of terror against the people of Iran and its allies, although small in numbers, continues to be a terrorist threat in the area, due largely to US support. It is able to continue to function with an aging membership due to that support. The US has never understood, in terms of Iran, Palestine, Vietnam, and countries around the world, how these populations do not want to live under the rule of a cruel US puppet, but want, like all peoples, to determine for themselves the government under which they will live. Because of this, the US has supported anti-government terrorists in Nicaragua, Chile, Syria, and many other countries. Overthrew the democratically elected governments of Iran in 1953, Chile in 1971, again among many others, and has invaded countless countries, including Vietnam, Iraq, Libya, and others. Its support for another terrorist organization, the MEK, is not surprising, since the US has no regard for human rights within its own borders or anywhere else on the planet. As a result, it is likely that suffering will continue in many parts of the world, and terrorists such as the MEK will continue to function with US financial and diplomatic support. This is a tragedy for the world. Thank you.